Time to elevate.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Running on Empty 2023. I'm Matt.
And I'm Tony.
And we're running on empty. And this year, we're going to be doing things a little bit different than we've done in the past. Last year, we did a lot of interviews and that basically is how things started. But I think our original idea with this was to put in some music and talk about, songs and their meanings and their messages when they were created. And it's kind of an offshoot, Tony, of your class, which is the Rhetoric of Rock and Roll, which I sat in. Yes. And it's a really awesome class, by the way. We were talking about Elvis and that in that class.
Yeah.
But so we don't really have a name for this particular type of, still running on empty, but, this is our music series, if you will. So if you have a catchy or creative name, send us a message, make it in the comments below, and we'll take it under advisement. So,
yes. And the inaugural tune that we will talk about to launch this series on Running on Empty is the classic song from 1966, For What It's Worth, by the band Buffalo Springfield, which was a band that was around from 1966 to 1968. Probably most famous for the song For What It's Worth, but also famous in that two of the members of that band, Neil Young and Stephen Stills, became part of, obviously, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. And the Buffalo Springfield, by the way, is one of the most important bands in the history of popular music. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, when they came around in 1966, I mean, they were kind of unique. They were doing a blend of kind of country rock and pop and psychedelia, a little bit of hard rock. The guitar playing of both Neil Young and Stephen Stills, I mean, those are two of the greatest guitar players in the history of rock.
Oh, yeah.
And we see it in their songs. And the song For What It's Worth is really fascinating, Matt, in a lot of different ways, because it's written by Stephen Stills, and the song almost immediately got adopted, if you will, by the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement. Even though, I mean, do you know the story of the song? What Stills was actually writing about?
See, the original story, I don't know. I mean, I obviously know what the lyrics are and what I understand the lyrics to be, but the original story, I do not know.
Yeah, apparently Stills was upset at the police harassing young people in the Hollywood area. And it wasn't like harassing young people over anti-Vietnam protests or civil rights or anything like that. It was, the kids were out partying late.
Yeah.
And they were protesting things like curfews and so on. So I think Stills himself was kind of surprised at how the song got taken up by big national movements, even though that was not really what he was writing about at the time. But the lyrics obviously lend themselves to those kind of movements, right? I mean, that's what I find fascinating about that song, right?
Oh, I totally agree. So let's listen to the song and then we'll jump into the lyrics.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. There's battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds are getting so much resistance from behind. Time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. What a field day for the heat. 1,000 people in the street, singing songs and carrying signs, mostly say hooray for our side. It's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Paranoia strikes deep into your life, it will creep. It starts when you're always afraid. Step out of line, the man come and take you away. We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop now. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop. Children, what's that sound?
All right, now that we've had a chance to listen to the song, let's dive into the lyrics.
If we look at some of the words, right, there's battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong.
Right?
I mean, think about it, Matt. That a line like that will never go out of fashion.
Never. never.
Right? And I think today, you look at social media where it seems like literally everybody's wrong about everything. That line fits perfectly. And then the follow-up line to that, young people speaking their minds, getting so much resistance from behind. Now, of course, Stephen Stills is an old-time baby boomer, and I've noticed that the baby boomers and the Zoomer generation have a lot in common.
Okay.
Yeah, right. I mean, the baby boomers back in the mid 60s felt like they were being put down and, accused of not being supportive of the traditional American system. And I think you see a lot of that look at the Zoomers, right? These kids these kids today take criticism in large part because they don't appreciate having to work long hours at shitty jobs.
Right.
Right. And they also tend to be a little bit more multicultural and tolerant than generations before them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I find those to be really great things about the Zoomer generation. No one should work long hours at a shitty job for no pay.
No, not at all. One of the lines, in the song, I got the lyrics up in front of me. What a field day for the heat. 1,000 people in the street singing songs. They're carrying signs, mostly say hooray for our side. That goes to, what I love about this song and the fact that there's been, a number of really cool remakes of this too. So, we talk about going from the boomers to the Zoomers.
Mm-hmm,
okay.
Right.
Well, now you take this exact same song and Stevie Nicks just did one a few months ago, and Candlebox did one during COVID, which I thought was really interesting because it was one of those things like there's something happening. Like the first line is like, okay, whatever, like the situation is completely relevant today. It was 10 years ago. It was when it was written. It's going to be relevant 20 years from now.
The Candlebox version is really fascinating because, like you said, it came out really at the height of COVID. And if you look at their official video, they for their version of it, they've got like the videos of Martin Luther King and marching from the 1960s. So once again, it's this song being put into a context that it really wasn't written for,
right?
But it absolutely fits.
Oh, completely fits. It would be interesting to see if maybe we can get Stephen Stills in the next show.
Oh my God, I'd love to. He's what an icon. But the Stevie Nicks version is really fascinating. Now, she sent out a message to her fans before she released the recording, saying that she was a fan of the song when it came out.
Okay.
In 1966. Now, talk about growing old gracefully. Have you seen Stevie Nicks recently?
She looks pretty good.
Yeah, you would never know that. I think, what is she, 70? I think she's probably 70 now, something like that. But she released her version not too long after the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe versus Wade. And, Stevie Nicks has always been somewhat of a feminist, not necessarily as much of an activist as other artists, but I think she, like many people, I think the Dobbs decision really was maybe like the last straw, something
Right.
that has now pushed them into more visual activism. But I love her version, in not just that. Obviously, Stevie Nicks' singing is always outstanding.
Oh yeah.
But the guitar in her song is played by a guy named Waddy Wachtel, who's played with Linda Ronstadt and Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. Did a couple of really great solo albums in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
And Waddy Wachtel plays rhythm guitar in those albums. He's absolutely, he's absolutely outstanding. I mean, he's one of the great rock and roll guitar players, underrated of all time. So there's a lot to be said for that Stevie Nicks version. Another one, I don't know if I'd call it a technical cover, but you remember the song, the movie He Got Game.
Oh yeah.
With, I think it was Denzel Washington back in 1998. Well, Public Enemy, the hip hop group, did most of the soundtrack for that movie, and one of the songs, the title song of the movie, He Got Game, they sample For What It's Worth, and then they actually brought Stephen Stills back to sing some of the lyrics.
Wow.
So in other words, instead of just taking him from the sample, they had him come into the studio and do it fresh. It's really, really outstanding. So again, the point we're making is that song, For What It's Worth, I mean, one thing that makes it so classic is that it can fit into pretty much any activist kind of situation you can imagine.
Any activist, any social cause, really. That's and I think as kids today discover this song, and they really listen to the lyrics. And I know that was not the intention of writing it, but the moment that these kids hear this, they're like, wow, that means something. Like there's so much of today's music just doesn't mean anything. This means something. And then these kids, and I commend them for it, because if you take a look, there's a lot of kids out there. They got a YouTube channel or an Instagram or a TikTok or whatever, and they're doing their own version of it. This is their kind of way to get into this activism at maybe a small level, and then maybe a bit bigger later on, but at least they're taking notice of it. And I'm noticing more people taking notice of it now.
Well, and you're making such an outstanding point. And I think young people today experience a kind of paranoia about all this technology, that it feels like we're living in the kind of Big Brother age right now, or the Brave New World, whatever. And so that song has that great line, paranoia strikes deep. Into your life it will creep. It starts when you're always afraid to step out of line. The men come and take you away.
If that doesn't make you more paranoid, right?
I know. But I mean, we're living in this time now where I think there's justifiable reason for paranoia.
Yeah, well, I mean, take a look at I'll use like the Black Lives Matter movement, not necessarily kind of it's turned into, but there's, I mean, obviously with all the videos of some of the police brutality out there, paranoia strikes deep. Into your life it will creep. It starts when you're always afraid. There's a reason a lot of people are afraid out there. And I mean, the song's not necessarily going to change people's minds. It makes you aware. I don't want to use the word woke. That has been so overused and whatnot. But there's definitely an awareness that it makes, at least if people aren't necessarily on the same page with kind of activism, but maybe they're kind of on the fence about it, or maybe they don't even realize about it, and they hear a song like this, it does make you think. And that's one of the things I like, and I think it'll stand the test of time, when it was written in 66 and, in 2066. The song will always and forever make people think. And
this is really interesting. If we could talk to Stephen Stills, I imagine he would say, and this was true of so many people that wrote songs in that time period of the 1960s, there's kind of like a magic to it, right? I'm sure he would probably say, I don't even really know how I came up with this. It was kind of like an inspiration
Yeah.
at the moment, watching the police go, overboard in Hollywood. And, and obviously Stephen Stills has written many great songs over the years. I don't know if he ever actually approached this again.
Yeah.
Something with this level of social consciousness. I mean, he wrote, a handful of other socially conscious tunes. Love the One You're With might be one of the great examples, right? 4 and 20 with Crosby, Stills and Nash. So he's written some really great songs, but this is like very it's almost like Bob Dylan-esque, like the early Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Right. I think, Bob Dylan, and we'll have to do a show about Bob Dylan at some point, but Bob Dylan became like the spokesperson for the civil rights movement in the early 60s, even though he never really wanted to be that, as he has said numerous times. In fact, he got so frustrated by that by around 65 or 66, Dylan started writing these more abstract songs. And so there was kind of like an opening for people that could write like almost like the early Dylan type of songs, the commentary songs, the message songs. And you get people like Phil Oakes and Tom Paxton and the Buffalo Springfield.
Yeah.
Right. With a song like this.
Yeah. It's funny because the first time I remember hearing this song, I mean, I was a DJ a long time ago, but I got the song and knowing when it was written and looking at the lyrics and then listening to the lyrics, and the whole vibe of the song is very, kind of slow, trippy.
Yeah.
I immediately thought in my head, okay, this is a Vietnam protest song.
Right.
That's it. That's the first thing that came to my mind, not what Stephen Stills intended.
Right.
But so I can see how a song like that, and again, I suppose it's about, the man being in charge and telling you what to do. And, but to me, one of the songs that I want to do on a future episode is John Wesley Harding tune, which I actually think continues the trend of what this song does.
Yes.
And updates it a little bit. The song is called The Truth, and we'll talk about that in a future episode. But that one is one of those songs that it was relevant when it was written, because that was written early 90s. So that was kind of like pre-Gulf War stuff. And now we're going into what it means today. Same stuff, just
absolutely.
Like so. I'm really excited that we're back on this music track here.
Yeah, me too.
Being able to talk about stuff, because I think a lot of times people hear stuff and they don't necessarily know it, or maybe they're really interested about what's some of the behind the scenes. And we only got about 20 minutes for each show, but at least to put in some thought and some critical thinking, to be like, make somebody wonder and go, I want to check that out. So hopefully this is inspirational to folks out there.
Yeah. The other, and one last thing about that song, Matt, we've been talking mostly about the words, but the music in that song is the only word I can find for it is hypnotic.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? It's got like that. It's got some of the most unique guitar playing in the history of popular music. And it's usually when we think of iconic, we think of like iconic visuals.
Sure.
Or an iconic message, but this has got some iconic sound.
It totally does. Like there's nothing else that sounds like it.
There's nothing else that sounds like it. Nothing else that sounds like it. It's completely unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Buffalo Springfield, I mean, my goodness, they had so many other great songs too. I mean, my favorite one, other than this one, is a song called Bluebird.
Okay.
Which has this kind of like guitar battle between Stills and Young. What Neil Young they called the godfather of grunge. Right. And I mean, even in Buffalo Springfield, you can hear traces of that guitar playing.
Oh, it's especially as it's fading out at the end, it's got that kind of dirty-ish.
Yeah.
I love it. I really, really love it. And I think that in the Stevie Nicks version, she took that to an all new level. I mean, there's some really kick-ass guitar playing in that, like you said.
Yeah, it's absolutely great. Yeah, so like you, Matt, I'm excited that we're going down this road, and there's going to be a whole. Thankfully, there's no shortage of songs to talk about.
No, there's definitely not a shortage of songs. So,
there are thousands of them.
Absolutely. And just to give folks a little bit of sneak peek as to what's coming up on future ones, we're going to be talking about John Wesley Harding, The Truth. I really want to do something about Sound of Silence, both
Oh
the
yeah.
Simon and Garfunkel and the Disturbed version. I think Disturbed nailed it, probably better than any other remake I've ever heard, and really made it their own. And I think it really encompasses the anger that's within today's society, with with young people, old people, and just taking it and applying it towards what's relevant today. Again, it's still a relevant song, but we're going to find a lot of those over the next year as we start digging through songs, and
Yeah.
hopefully our listeners like it. And if you got any other songs out there, folks, that you want us to talk about, investigate, or maybe you like a remake better than an original, whatever the case is, send
Yeah.
it our way. And in the comments and everything below, we're going to put those links to like the original, the Stevie Nicks, the Candlebox, and all that. And I'd like to put in that the movie soundtrack one too. I think that'd be cool.
All right, we will do that. And I guess, Matt, until next time, as always, we need to stay elevated.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Peace out.
You're running on empty with Matt and Tony.